Okay, so this is the second lecture of Unit 3, and if you are following along the handout, you can see that it is very short. So that's a good thing, and so let's just go ahead and jump right in. So here we're talking about, we're still in the skeletal system, and we're going to talk about articulations. So articulations are joints, so joints also known as articulations. So any articulation is a place of contact between bones, or between bones and cartilage, or between bones and teeth. So different parts of the skeletal structure. All right, so there's two jobs with every joint. It may be, it may have both. It may just have, it may only be one. It could be to secure the bones together, and it could also be to allow for movement. So some joints need to allow for movement, some do not. So you kind of have to keep those separate. All right, now let's talk about structurally how the material binds the bones together and whether there is or is not a joint cavity. So let's get some vocabulary together. The first type we're going to talk about are fibrous joints. And here we're going to be in the textbook. I'll show you the picture after I get these, after we talk about it a little bit. All right, so this is going to be on page 302 in your book, if you're following along. Now, most of these fibrous joints are immovable, so no movement. Their job is primarily to secure the bones together. So these are called synarthroses. Now, as we go through this, I'm going to give you a little bit of nomenclature hint. So write this up in the top. If you have talking about one single joint, it's going to be, this would be like a synarthrosis. So it has an I, that would be singular. If it has an E, that would be the plural. So here we're talking about multiple joints, so synarthroses. So several joints. If we're talking about one specific joint, it would be a synarthrosis. So here, the bone ends of the parts are joined together by dense, regular connective tissue. There are three types. The first one is called a gomphoses or gomphosis. Colloquially, a peg in a socket. The example here would be teeth in their bone socket. All right, so one tooth and its one bone socket would be a gomphosis. So if we're talking about all the teeth, would be gomphoses. Next one, you can have suture joints. Suture joints are irregular edges of the bones. They interlock, and they're joined with short fibrous connective tissue, and that could be calcified, so it could be turned in, this tissue may turn into bone as an adult, but not in early childhood. So these suture joints, these are going to be primarily the ones in the skull. So, you know, babies have real soft heads, and then over time their skulls get hard. So this fibrous tissue does turn into bone as they get older. Next, this is another fun word. These are called Syndesmoses, or one would be Syndesmosis. Syn meaning together, desmos means fasten, so they're fastened together. So these bones do not interlock, but they are still held together with the dense fibrous tissue. They have a tiny little bit amount of give, but they're basically immovable. So example here would be the distal end of the tibia and the fibula. Now we haven't talked about bones specifically. So here, these are the lower leg bones, bones of the lower leg. Distal meaning the end further from the trunk, so closer to the ankle, so near the ankle. Okay, so I told you that I would talk about them, and now I'll show you the picture. So here we are, page 302. Here we have, this is our symphysis. So here's our socket, our tooth socket, and then here's the tooth. So there's the root, you've got the membrane, so this whole part is this symphysis. So you have the tooth root in the socket there. Now suture of the skull, see how these are interlocked? These bones are interlocked, and in a baby this is connective tissue, and then it hardens into solid bone as an adult. If you want to know, this is called a synarthrosis. We did not write that down. Yeah, we did. We wrote it down up here. Synarthrosis. So that'd be the suture. And then here, a syndesmosis. So here between the bones, we were talking about the lower leg, but here this is the radius and the ulna, so this is the lower arm. So if you look here, they're connected by all of this connective tissue that holds them together. Or, you know, right down here, connected there. So connective tissue, now you can see this has not become bone. Even in an adult, this is still just dense connective tissue that holds them together. So if you move one bone, this will give a little bit, but it's not particularly holding them together. That's not just gonna move freely. It's gonna hold them together, so they're probably gonna break if there's enough force on them. So that's the first group. Next group, again, we will talk about them, and then I'll show you a picture and we'll talk about them some more. These are called cartilaginous joints. In cartilaginous joints, these are slightly movable. So there's two types. The first ones are called synchondroses. Remember, chondro meaning cartilage, syn meaning together. All right, so these are usually temporary joints that are hyaline cartilage, and they're going to be replaced by the bone. All right, so here we're talking about, so they're going to be replaced by hyaline cartilage. So if you remember from long bones in last week, we were talking about the growth plate. So the epiphyseal plate, that's hyaline cartilage. In long bones of children, so this is where they grow, so the growth plate. Or you can have the articulation, so the joining of the very first rib in the rib cage with the sternum. That's hyaline cartilage there. Now, you can also have what is known as a symphysis. This is where it's a growth together. That's where you have a flat, broad disc that is fibrocartilage. Cartilage that connects the bone. It's going to resist compression, and it's going to help provide some against the tension, against the stress. So this is where we're talking about the shock absorber. Two places here. The first one, like we talked about everywhere there's fibrocartilage, the intervertebral discs. Again, remember, these are not bone. This does not turn into bone at all. So this is fibrocartilage. And also there is the pubic symphysis, and that's where the pubic bones join together. We looked at a picture of that last week as well. So, two types. Let's look at them. All right, this is on page 303. So 9.3, this is on page 303. So here I am. So here, this is a syndesmosis. So hyaline cartilage. Here's the long bone. The epiphyseal plate, that's cartilage, and it's going to become bone as this growth plate closes. Now, you can also look at the hyaline cartilage that connects this first rib here to the sternum. So then you also have joints where the rib and its other cartilage there, but this is the one that we mentioned in the notes. Now, the symphyses, these are the fibrocartilage, not hyaline cartilage. So the intervertebral discs connects them with that fibrocartilage. Now, the pubic symphysis, here you have one pubic bone, two pubic bones connected by this little disc here. The pubic symphysis fibrocartilage helps resist some shock. So those aren't too hard. The word's a little weird, but not too bad. All right, let's turn the page.